Ahead and share my screen, and if you didn't have a chance to sign in, I'm hoping Erin, our awesome Edtech team director, this is Erin, say hi Erin, is also with me today if you have some questions in the chat or you were wondering about anything, and he is also going to be putting some links in there and stuff for me today. So waiting for my screen to share. It's just going to take a little while because I do, like I said, have a ton open. You're going to see that here in a second. And I will look over at the chat off and on, so that's on a different screen. So, and I'll edit all this part out. But so welcome to some digital tools for, I ended up putting it digital tools for back to school and beyond. The reason I did that is I really started structuring this training, trying to think of the point of view of a teacher. And I started doing just different tools. And then I said, no, it has to be more than that. And then I started organizing it by different learning environments. But then I realized one tool could be great for so many different environments. So what I ended up doing for this guy, and so it's a pretty long slide deck, but I will give you this slide deck when we are all finished, is I focused on 4 main areas. So we're going to cover that today for student collaboration, classroom management, student engagement, and content differentiation, and how now that we have our classrooms back and we're going to be inside the classroom with our students, we don't want to say, well, I know you kind of get to the point where you want to say it though, where you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to turn off technology and I don't want to deal with it anymore. And let's just take a break. I am totally okay with that. I work at Edtech. Take a break for things, but now we have one-on-one devices and students have this awesome tool in front of them. And regardless of how awful the whole pandemic situation was, we've gotten into this place where we were actually forced to use these tools and we realized, wow, I can do this, or wow, I'm going to throw this in here. And so we're trying to give you some hopefully quick wins, some really great ideas that you guys can use for moving up into this next school year, and take that time to just put in a few little activities here and there. There's going to be a lot, but the whole point of this was to say, here are some things that you can start using, but incorporate them through the rest of the year. So by no means do we want to freak you out or say, oh my gosh, there's too many things. Take 1 or 2 things, take this slide deck and add more in the next 2 months or something else. So like I said, we totally understand where teachers are coming from. So that being said, when I do hand out the slide deck, these are going to link to each one of the sections in the slide deck. And then if you click on the little home button when we get to those main sections, it'll bring you back here so you can easily go on to any of those tools. So that way you're also not going, oh my goodness, there's this big slide deck, but I don't even know where anything is. I tried to organize it so you guys can have it later. So let's start talking about this first section, which is student collaboration. And sometimes you don't really think about using technology tools for students collaborating with each other, right? But what we're going to look at are some tools, a lot of Google tools, some other digital tools where students can possibly work in small groups or going through rotations or coming up with some engaging tools where students can kind of have some fun with stuff. So on the next slide, here are the tools we're going to cover. We're going to look at Jamboard, Slides, Docs, and Flipgrid. So maybe you used these last year, which is awesome. I'm not going to dive into exactly how to use these tools, but know that our goal at Edtech is we do have all of these tools available. So that way we can, well, not just tools, but we have all the training that goes with these tools available. So you can fill out one of our requests for training forms, and we'll work with you guys in small groups or one-on-one, and we'll show you exactly how to use each one of these. So today is more of like an overview or kind of taking these tools to the next level, more so than like getting right into the tool, but I am going to show you a little bit about them. So the first one we're going to look at is Jamboard. And on Jamboard, the reason I say use Jamboard with small groups is these reasons. First of all, it works so great with concurrent instruction. Jamboard is a Google tool that allows all of the students to get into that one Jamboard at once. And so all of the students can be working on it at the same time. Now, if you don't want all of one small group to be working in the same one, you can actually have small group rotations, but they're doing independent work. So you can make like one Jamboard for each day, and then the students can work on it, or have one Jamboard for a frame for every single day. And then you can sort of create small group templates, like by having a background or something. So to go along with that, here are some tips for using Jamboard. And I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by that. One thing is to color code your Jamboard for whatever group or team you're using or that is using it, so it's easy to find it. Have instructions on every frame so each group member can refer to them without having to come to you and ask you how to do stuff. You can even have a YouTube video or a video and have a link within that Jamboard, and students can watch directions that way. You can manage this space by reviewing this before sending them off to groups, because now you have the Promethean board and you can put it up on the board, or you might have a different board like VSonic or something, but you can throw it up on the board and go through it ahead of time. So that's kind of nice too. And then you can create differentiated activities by taking the same Jamboard, making a copy, and just adding some different things to it. Okay. So what I'm going to show you is just a little bit slow. So give it a second. There we go. Using Jamboard with small groups, you can have a jam that has, sorry, I went up to 2 of them. Give me a second. I'm trying to go up here. I have the circle of death. But we'll stay on the screen for right now. I don't know if my meat is catching up, though. Come on, meat. Well, hopefully my screen will go. The screen that I'm seeing, there it goes. Isn't, so I'm trying to watch that one too. There we go. So I'm actually inside a Jamboard right now. And the way Jamboard works is it has specific frames here. So you can have a different frame and all the students can be working on this at the same time. So what I meant by color coding is, we used to say by rooms for breakout rooms, but now you can do it by groups. So you can say like group 2, add in a blue bar. You can create these backgrounds on Google Slides and then download that JPEG and put it in the background, and then add sticky notes for what students need to work on. So this always has the same background. It always has the same instructions, and all you have to do is go through and change the sticky notes for what they're going to be working on. So that's what I'm saying is the small wins is it might take a little bit of time to create like a couple backgrounds for like 5 or 6 groups, but then you're always using these backgrounds, and then you can just change the sticky notes on what they say. Another way, so we have a whole bunch of them that are all different colors, and I did include this link in our slide deck so you guys can take it and make a copy of it. Here are some more ideas for Jamboard with small groups. So you can create a background Jamboard where they can have a small group discussion about like, I noticed this, I wonder. I loved to incorporate manipulatives with Google Slides, but now that Jamboard's here, like I really like the idea of inserting images with money or quarters or coins. You can have, like I said, those templates, like what are your glows and grows, and have them work on that like once a week for a reflection piece. Students can just use stickies old school, put one little image there and one question, and they can throw in for a brainstorm. There are a ton of team game templates for Jamboard, and then they can do those higher level problem solving. My students always love those. Like, you know, if you have one pizza, how many times can you cut it, only making 6 cuts to get the largest amount, you know, and the students have to like problem solve with how they do that. So all of these, and I'm hoping it'll move on here without stressing out, are going to be available. I did that further down, are going to be available in templates that are within this slide deck. So I talked about using Jamboard for small groups. Now let's talk about using Jamboard with the whole entire class. So Jamboard is also designed for, how do I put it? Like everybody working on it at the same time. And now that every single student has a device and we're one-to-one, you can create one Jamboard and all of the students can have their devices out and be working on it at the same time. So this can be the step off point for student discussions. They can start brainstorming ideas, give them a few minutes to do that, and then bring it back to the whole group and say, okay, let's look at this, let's have a discussion. And one of the things I suggest for that is to really use templates like what I was talking about before. Now, this template has the same ones in it, so I want to go down and show you one of the templates I was talking about. So you can create a template background like this for Jamboard for any type of group discussions. If you have a certain framework you use, like a Kagan strategy, if you have something that you've used in class before, like think, pair, share, or turn and talk, or if you have any discussion strategies. I used to use this one on the whiteboard, and students would come up and they would like write down or use actual sticky notes and write down their names. If they would strongly agree, strongly disagree, or mostly agree based on the topic. So this is the same background. And then on Jamboard, I can go over here to images. And let's say I wanted to add an image because we were talking about character traits and whether we thought Harry Potter was actually a well-behaved student, or if we thought maybe he, because he's always getting in trouble and breaking the rules, but yet he's like, the protagonist of the story. So I can go here to upload. I can use a URL. I can use my camera. It's great because I can use a Google image search right from here, and I can look up a picture of, Harry Potter. And then I can look that up and throw that in there. I'll stick him in there. So it won't take very long to set this up for the class with whatever discussion we're going to have. And then I will just go over here to text. And I'm hoping it doesn't freeze up on me. Please don't freeze up on me. And I will stick a text box here, or I can stick it up at the top. And I can type in, like, do you think Harry Potter is a good character, right? I won't do the whole thing because that will take me a while. And then when the students come in, you can have them all have access to this Jamboard by going here to share and giving them the link. Now, when you do give a link to Jamboard, you want to make sure that anyone with the link can edit this, okay? So anyone with the link can edit, and then you're going to copy that link and give it to your students, and then they can get in here and they can say, put a sticky note with your name on it. And I did one so I can model it and say, put it where, do you strongly agree? Do you strongly disagree? Do you mostly disagree? And they can do that and then say, okay, go sit with your group of strongly disagree, sit with your group of strongly agree, and go talk about why you believe that. Now bring it back to the whole group and have one person from each group discuss. So it's just managing that space. And then you can keep this board and have everybody's responses and where they stood on things, and you can remember it, and then you can copy it and create a brand new one. So using templates is a great way for using Jamboard with the entire class while you're in class. So going along with this, here are some ideas for using it with whole groups as well. Search for Google and add it right into the Jam. I already showed you guys that. The tools are pretty easy for students to understand. Make sure that you share set permissions to everyone can edit. And if you're wondering how to share that link, you can send the Jamboard through Google Classroom. Or we're going to talk about some other ways that we can send it to. So that's kind of fun. We're going to talk about a little bit later on. So here's a few examples of Jamboard templates. That was the one I showed you, like option 1 or option 2. What would you rather have? If you strongly agree on things. There's a ton of Edu protocol backgrounds or jot and spot, and they can draw pictures or think of things. And then you can even put the background as a worksheet where everyone's working on a frame or they're working on a frame together. And then you can bring them back to talk about it. Now, going along with this, here are some other examples. You can have them do, I can't remember, line plot or graphing. You can have them label diagrams about something we just talked about. I love that you can use it for going over vocabulary words. Like, what does this word mean to you? What do you think it is? Once again, adding those manipulatives in, incorporating polls on what our next reading book's going to be. Love it for the idea of calendar math. Or for older students, you can say, okay, here's a sorting chart. If I have Lady Capulet and Lady Montague and all these different characters, just write them all out on sticky notes everywhere and stick them in there, and they have to sort through them. So there's so many ways you can use Jamboard, but what I'm going to give you as a freebie today, but you're going to have to hang with me and I'll send it out later, is if you click on this link in our slide deck, we have templates already made for you. So if you scroll down this way, anytime we find templates, anytime someone shared it with us, if you guys have some templates and you want to like put your name in the bottom corner and be like, this is amazing, like go ahead and check this out. We have a ton of them and we keep adding them to this folder and you will have access to them. So what you're going to want to do is once you have them in this folder, is open up, because it's set to only view it. So you're going to be like, well, I can't use it because I have to view it. You're going to have to make your own copy. Okay. So open up a Jamboard slide or a Jamboard. I don't even know what they are. Decks, dashboard, jam. I think they call them jams. Open up a jam and then go to these three dots. And I'm hoping it loads or else I might have to show you, not be able to show you. But if I go to these three dots, I can make a copy. And then once I make my own copy, then I have the Jamboard and you can edit it however you want to. So there is make a copy. And when I make a copy, it'll make a copy of this Jamboard in my actual drive. And then you can have all of the manipulatives on it in the background and everything. So we have a whole bunch of those in that drive folder for you guys. So that's essentially using Jamboard, which I think is awesome. We also have some references to how to use it. I'm going to move over to G Suite tools here in a minute for using this collaboratively. And if I don't get through this whole thing, it's okay. It was like a long training for it, but I will give you the slide deck with everything in the end regardless. But do we have any questions, or if you want to put them in the chat or anything about Jamboard or something else like that? Plus I needed a drink. Okay. So a lot of teachers, and if you want to put it in the chat, I'll keep looking over at it, have been using Google Tools, which is amazing. So now let's talk about how Google Tools can be used for small groups, starting out with Google Slides. Now, what I love about Google Slides is you can create templates with like one slide for every single task students need to complete. You can have Google Slides where you can actually use them to manage rotations. You can create games, so game boards and different things that are digital on Google Slides if you want to have it where you're saving the responses or you're wanting to look at stuff. And this is a great way for like interactive small groups that you have to do very quickly, but you don't have time to clean up. So I used to set up all my small group centers and I loved it. And I had kind of a system where they could take all their task cards and games and things and clean them up really quick. But it inevitably, like by Friday, someone had lost one of the game pieces or someone couldn't win because all of a sudden one of the cards is gone or something. And I'd be like, ah. So what's kind of nice about the interactive game is you can create one for each one and not have to worry about stuff like that, depending on the age of your students. So here are some ideas for activities for collaborating. So there are one slide per student activities where students, and you can click on these when you get the slide deck. You can also have research presentations where you create a template on a Google slide and then teach the students how to put an image in the background and how to change the content in that space. And then when they put together each of their pieces, they have a presentation that they can present. I did that all the time. I would also use Prezi, but we don't support Prezi, but Prezi was fun. There's the Teacher's Guide to Google Classroom if you haven't seen it, but this just demonstrates how you can create a classroom ebook. So you go to Google Slides, make it where each one is the size of a page, and then have give students sort of a template where it looks like, you know, the framework of a page, and then students have to add the content, and then they liked sharing their books with each other, especially if it was like a nonfiction research book, or some of them wanted to create awesome nonfiction stories, so I did that a lot too. And there are a lot of digital Kagan templates out there where you can have discussion tools for students to use when they're talking. So one of the things that I mentioned was having one slide per student. And this is a color symbol activity. And what students do is it says, what represents you? Choose a color symbol or image picture that represents who you are. Be sure to share why you picked it. So students can put their name up here. And then they can use coloring tools here, they can use symbols here, and they can use images here. And what I would show my students how to do is they can go up here to insert in Google Slides, and they can insert a shape And then they can use the fill tool. So that's what it meant by color bucket, but it's just freezing for a while, sorry. They can use the fill tool to change that color. And then like all other Google tools, just like I just showed you with Jamboard, you can go to insert image right from the web. And all of those images are going to be Creative Commons, where students are able to use them. They're available copyright-wise. So they can search the web and they can find a symbol, they can find an image, and they can stick it right in here within Google Slides. And then they, at the end, they're going to create this big slide deck where they all have access to it. And then I can go look at like Jason's image and I can look at Rebecca's image. Now, some teachers are a little leery doing this because they go, well, what if someone goes over to Jason's and takes his name off and adds a, you know, I don't know, a goat or something. I can't even think of anything inappropriate, but had something here, but the student wanted a heart and what's wrong. And if you go to file, this is one of my friends too, like my digital friend, is version history. And if I go to see version history, I can go back and see all of the changes that have been made in this particular slide deck. And I don't think I have a lot because I'm the only one who's been in here, but for anyone who's signed in with Google and they're in there, I can see like Jason went to this slide and made this change on Friday and he did this. And I'll be like, Jason, you did change Marcus's, you know, slide. Like, man, I see it right here that you did it. And I usually show students that, hopefully it doesn't crash everything. I'll usually show students that, I'll just close that real quick. I usually show students how I can do that at the beginning and say, oh, I can look at version history and see what everybody did. And just knowing that in the back of their mind, they usually tended not to mess with anyone else's things. This is a slide deck I had made for my students. No, this is one someone else made for students. I made one similar to this for Greek mythology. I just can't find it. I put page title here and just put information goes here. And then I had a blank background and I showed the students how to add an image to that background using those same Google tools. And then when you go through it, it would have their information and then the background, and we would show how to publish it and that they could see it going through, and that would be their presentations. So really fun way to use Google tools collaboratively. And you can go here and get all of these different slide templates. If you click on each one of these, it will also have one. And one of the other things I'm sharing, if you haven't ever found the book, Edu Protocols by John Crippo, he has so many great strategies that function so well for small groups. It's amazing, where the structure of how you do the activity always stays the same. It's just that the content changes. So for example, a cyber sandwich is where you find one source of something, you make 5 slides that are just sort of blank and they don't have anything on it, and you have 2 students, and then the students have to go through, and on the first slide, one student puts all their information. On the second slide, the second student puts all their information. On the third slide, they put it together as a Venn diagram. On the 4th slide, they edit it, and on the 5th slide, they have a really good version of what a summarized article or a summation would be. And so it has all of these templates and things and all of this links to it, but there are so many great strategies for Edu Protocols. There's Fast and Curious for how to use vocabulary. There's Freya, a friend. So I created, out of all the free ones he has available, so I didn't take any that he already didn't make available, and I put them all in one doc with a YouTube link on how to do it, as well as a link to a template to do it as well. So that's on there for you. Like I said, I'm trying not to make you do anything. I just want to give you a lot of freebies that hopefully when you go back, you're like, oh my gosh, if I didn't get anything out of it, at least I have ideas for Edu Protocols for the rest of the year. So other ways you can use Google Slides. So I told you you can create game boards. So here's some game boards. Here's some awesome weekly planners that students can use. And if you go, oh my gosh, those look absolutely amazing, I have no time whatsoever to make these. So what the student does is they come in, you can put in your welcome message, and then on Monday, for the student centers, students can click on Monday, they can watch a video of what they're supposed to do, and then as the students, they can go here to read instructions, and then they'll know the next step that they're supposed to complete. And you're like, man, that's a lot, right? And here's another example of the board games and it has all of the different activities and it looks so cool. And you're like, I don't have time to do that. I'm not that type of person. Well, I'm not either. So what I'm going to share with you today, and I'm actually pulled all from the same source, is there's something called slidesmania.com. Her name is Paula. She's awesome. She's on Twitter if you want to follow her. Her main goal in life is to create a ton of slide deck templates that are absolutely free for teachers to use. So she has educational templates. She has fun ones, professional ones, and a lot of them are just an entire slide deck of manipulatives. She has an entire slide deck of games and game boards. She has planners. So I'm going to be showing you guys those today, but definitely Slides Mania. All you have to do is get it, make your own copy of it, and then you can just throw your content in and it looks as nice as that. And she also has a ton of game slides, like to gamify the classroom, almost like Jeopardy or doing things like that. So such a great resource. I didn't discover it as much until after I left the classroom, but holy cow, I would totally like pillage every single one of these things and use it repeatedly. So another great tool is Google Docs. So ideas for Google Docs for small groups is having a rotation schedule on a doc with the links of where students need to go. You can also have jigsaw activities where students can get into the same activity together and then be working on that doc all at the same time. My advice for that is to have those templates or a structure where students know where to put things into it. So I'm going to go over that and show you guys that in a second. So here's some examples that I linked to, but I'm actually going to show you in real life. So here's a Hyperdoc. If you've never seen a Hyperdoc, it basically means things organized with lots of links. This is a Hyperdoc template you can have and you can change. They cannot actually check the box, which drives me crazy. I wish they could, but that's fine. I just used bullets and I chose the checkbox option. But here's what the students have to do on Monday. Here's what they have to do on Tuesday. Here's what they have to do on Wednesday. And this was just created on a table and I just filled in the background. So not super hard, but all of these links will link them to what they have to access. So it's not they have a list and then they have to go out and find other materials and figure out where things are. It's linked within the doc itself. So they go here to the Google slide deck about the Fryer model. Then they're going to link to their Journal 1 entry. And you can actually link these to a Google Classroom activity. And if you want to see how to do that, I can show it to you. But that's another idea for how to use Google Docs. One of the things I loved using Google Docs for is those jigsaw activities and for students to learn different content and do research. Now, I taught fourth grade, and obviously there has to be a higher level. But one of the things that I absolutely love about Google Docs, and we were learning about state symbols. So if you've never learned this lovely little gem, the tarantula hawk wasp, I'm trying to make sure I know how to spell that, is our state insect. So there's a ton of state symbols. There's a state bear, a state flower, a state bird, a state cookie. So I would have my students look that up about New Mexico history and then figure out why that like epitomizes New Mexico, right? So students would find symbols. They'd go here and they can go up to insert and they can add that image like we previously stated to search the web. Now, one of the things though is this explore tool, which you may not know a whole lot about, but man, once my students started using it, we used it a lot. So if you go to the Explore tool, what it does is it works in conjunction with Google, not just Google Images, but Google in general. So you notice I put in tarantula hawk wasp. So it's going to pull up, were you thinking about learning more about tarantula hawk wasp? So I said, yeah, that's good. It'll pull from 3 different locations: the web, Google Images, or Google Drive. And what's great about this is it has citation and everything embedded within Google Docs itself. So if students go, ooh, look, Wikipedia. Now I get Wikipedia is not the best thing to look up, but I think Google and Wikipedia are in cahoots, but that's fine. That's just my conspiracy theory for the day. But you can go to any one of these other, here, this one looks reputable, the National Park Service. And if I click on that, and I'm just hoping it doesn't crash here, students can go right here. They can look at this really creepy tarantula hawk wasp. They can find some facts about it, that it can grow up to 2 inches in length, that it's dark blue, it has bright orange wings. This would be perfect for fourth grade. This is great content. So I would go back here to my document. And I can put some facts about my tarantula hawk wasp, that it is 2 inches long, it is orange, nothing wants to type for me. Sorry, it's kind of frozen. There it goes. I promise I know how to spell orange. There, okay, I don't. It's got long wings. Okay. I give up on trying to embarrass myself for the day. So the big important thing about this is once students have gathered that information, they should cite where that information came from. And over here, and I don't know if I can zoom in on this. Let's see, there it is. Over here, there are these quotation marks. And this will cite as a footnote. So if I click on this with this little quotation mark right here, it's going to put a 1 right here. And on the bottom of my screen, it's going to cite that website and where this information came from. So it's going to say what page it came from, what date it was accessed, what date we put this on here. Same thing for images. If I put in an image, it's going to cite, and actually it pulled up that image from the same article I was on, so that's kind of awesome. I go here and insert it. It's going to, and what's nice is it'll put it whatever size the box is. If I hover over this image, it's going to state where this image came from to cite it. So this is really good to get students how to cite stuff. And the more I kept using this, the more students saw a pattern and they would go, wow, I get how that you're putting the date first, you're doing this, you're adding this. And so that was kind of nice. And now I'm trying to remember, it's new. Tools. If you go to tools and you go to citations, students can actually add citations as well. And you can choose either APA or MLA format, and it will give all of the different types of sources you can use, like film, TV, books, and then how you accessed it, either print, a website, or online. And once you do that, you fill in all the necessary information, and it will create the citations correctly for you. And then at the end of the paper, it will allow you to create a bibliography. So it was so fun. I really wished I had it in college, but that's just my sad hope and broken dreams. But other than that, it's really, really great for students to start learning how to use that kind of stuff. Some other ideas, just really quick off the top of my head, is looking at that version history, creating any types of templates, and whatever you use. Templates are going to be your best friend with small groups. Using Google Classroom to create those assignments, but only giving them to specific groups of students. So just, you know, quick idea on that. Is there any questions about the Google tools? So I'm sorry, I'm going back. Myra, I'm sorry. I am recording this though. You might want to also try the live stream possibly. I don't know if that's going to work better or not, honestly. And Linda says she did this for research and it worked out really well. So great idea. I just love it. If you haven't played with Flipgrid, I'm not going to go into details on Flipgrid, but check it out. We do have a training for Flipgrid. And essentially what you do is you create a topic, and you can create a topic for each group. And then students can go somewhere in the room to respond to each other's videos. Students, now that they're in the classroom together, you can have them create a video together where, you know, not too close together, or at least wearing a mask, but they're talking to each other and responding or acting out something or being silly, or maybe showing a demonstration of a vocabulary word, or even I used to do, I don't remember what they're called, but where the students would write on paper and you'd move the paper back each page, you know, just to kind of show what you're doing, but we would record it. And then students can respond back to each other and the teacher can respond to students. So that's a really fun way to do groups with Flipgrid. The other thing is now students should have headphones with a microphone, so it kind of keeps down on noise. But one of the tricks is to find, I know it seems kind of weird, but find a corner in the room and tell students to talk into the corner or talk into the wall. If you don't happen to have headphones, so that way it's not bouncing out to the rest of the classroom, it's bouncing back into the device. And what's kind of nice about that is you can kind of have this quick discussion about how sound waves work too, so that's kind of fun. Setting it up for small groups though. If you've ever used Flipgrid, make sure students can respond to one another. Some people have had that turned off, but now that you're in the classroom, that might be something you might want to change. You can incorporate reading, like reading centers, or having like a book share, or almost like literacy circles, but not quite where you're trying to like, you know, pitch a book. Make sure to turn off topic group permissions and that topic moderations turned off, so that way it gives them a little more freedom to talk to each other. Now, obviously, I would work up to this and how to do it, but you know, and enable video and text comments. So it's just kind of an idea. I wasn't going to get into that a whole lot of details, but we do have a slide deck for you and a basic how to use Flipgrid, or like I said, hit us up for some ideas. If you have iPads though, and you're in a smaller class, something that functions exceedingly similar to Flipgrid is Apple Clips. Same sort of thing, as you can have one device per team. They can create an interactive story. One person can be recording and the other student can be demonstrating something, and then you can flip it around and share it again. And if you are in a younger class, you don't have to be within Seesaw to use Clips. You just go from within Clips and then you hit share and it'll share to the Seesaw Journal. So we did a Seesaw one-on-one training yesterday, and if you want to check that out, we talk about how to do that. So here's just, like I said, a couple other tools. I wasn't going to go into that one as detailed because we're limited for time today, but I wanted to throw a couple things in there that EdTech can train on. That if you're like, man, I'm just looking for something for like video responses or video storytelling, or presenting on a video and having other students look at it, or wanting to share that with parents, because I know that I'd always try and record, you know, something in class and then wanting to share it with parents. Those are a couple great tools to use. So I'm going to move on now to classroom management and how you can use some tools for managing your class, or how you want to manage these tools a little bit differently now that you have students in class. But was there any questions or anything about student collaborative work? And Erin, let me know how I'm coming across, because I'm trying to close stuff, but it might still be slow. I don't know.
Looking good. Everything is coming across fine.
Okay. I was trying to see questions, but all right.
I just wanted to add one thing, Tina.
More just comments.
Okay. What's up, Linda? Linda,
yeah,
right?
go for it. Sorry.
Yes. That's okay. One thing that I do after I do collaborative work, especially if it's, you know, something I'm grading, I have a form that the kids can give me feedback on their peers. And that helps me with being able to grade them appropriately.
Nice.
Especially middle school, you know, and Google Forms, that's your friend.
Nice. I'm going to get into that too, but more so managing classroom. But that's totally awesome. I will add it. I'll add it to here and put on the top going from Linda. Okay. When I send it out. So we're going to talk about classroom management. So here's using some of those other digital tools in a sort of different framework, maybe embedding some student voice and choice, adding some other digital tools to what you're already using. So the things I looked at for this was how you might want to configure Google Classroom a little bit differently. Still using a tool like Screencastify. I use Screencastify so much the last couple of years. But I kept thinking of great ideas on how you can use it in the classroom too. Now Goguardian, so we'll talk about how that can be used inside the classroom, and also Google Forms, because Google Forms are like, I love them so much. So let's talk about using Classroom as more of a little bit of a learning management system, or managing student work inside the classroom now. So one thing you can think about with Google Classroom is you might want to start setting up those topics differently. So take some time to really think about how you want to manage the space. It really does depend on your grade level. Middle school and high school are going to configure that way differently than how like elementary school would configure it. But what I have seen with some teachers, or I'm a Google certified trainer, so we share ideas and they, you know, give me things and stuff, is creating groups that are topics in your classroom now. So you can have like group 1, group 2. The other thing is a lot of teachers have said, man, I now feel good in this space, so let me start flipping my instruction. I can create instructional videos. That'll go with the Screencastify thing a little bit later, but I can incorporate those videos, link them in as a material assignment in Google Classroom, and then students can watch it, and then we can really spend that time in class doing activities, assignments, discussions, all those types of things. One thing I would suggest that I thought of right before I left, but a couple other teachers did it when I suggested it and they loved it, is make a folder for like best work or exemplary work, because I'm guessing middle school and high school, it's still at that point, but definitely for third, fourth, fifth, when they're starting to get in that mode of I can do this, I can be independent and do it, but I got to see what the heck that looks like, right? I would always try and create these exemplars and have them if it was the first time I did the work, but throughout the years, I'd be like, oh man, that's awesome. Can I either take a picture of it or can I have it to show next year's group? And over the years, I had like this closet full of like exemplary work. I could probably go to my closet right now at my house and bring you like one of these like things my nephew made because he was in my class, but that's aside from the point, but I would keep them. But now in a digital space, you can take that work and say, hey, can I make a copy of this? And I'll keep it in that folder. And then you can use that as an exemplar within your Google Classroom. And that goes along with providing some resources for students or exemplars, because it doesn't have to be a digital tool either. You can take a picture of something. So that way they're not, I did have this great, what are those things called? Lap books. And and students had to create their own lap book and explain how another student had to put it together or how they had to do it, to put in the info. So like another step beyond lap books, and the student created this beautiful lap book and I set it out at the centers, and so many students have been lifting it up and looking at the parts of it that they kind of like destroyed this lap book, and I had to keep like taping it together, and it just didn't look that great after time. So if I had taken pictures of it and then put it in there, it would have lasted a lot longer, and then the student got to keep it too. So also incorporating choice boards or assignment menus within Google Classroom so students can start picking things, but making that in a digital format. So here's some different ways to do topics. You can still do them by week or by day, but you shouldn't have to, how do I put this? Right now, we want Google Classroom to function not as everything, but as probably the most important things. These are the things you want students to have as their grades, that you want them to reference back to, that you want them to have. We're no longer in the space where you have to do everything in Google Classroom. You might want to rethink what you're putting in there so it's not overwhelming. So I would put like definitely our math assessments. If I have at the end of every single unit, I used to do this like huge problem solving activities. So for like area or perimeter, I told the students, we're having a party. This is amazing. But we need to either have the longest table where the most people could fit at it, or the fattest table where we can fit the most stuff on top of this big table. So how can you use your understanding of area and perimeter and how many students are in the class to help me figure that out? And so we would, go outside and we'd actually build like tables and do all this stuff. But that would be really cool if I had all the directions, instructions, references back here in Google Classroom, and then we could take pictures of it and then we can upload it and then have that in Google Classroom to assess later, because they're all moving around and running around doing different things, right? But I don't need to go in there and say, here's page 7, week 3 of stepping stones. Like I don't, you don't have to put all of that in there. So just think through what you're putting in Google Classroom now. For middle school or high school, you might want to think about organizing it by specific content area. It's just, I'm saying this because it was a flipped classroom, or doing it by subject now. So having reading activities, math activities, any of that kind of stuff. But another thing with Google Classroom is remember to rethink instructions. Stick to easy, stick to known, keep that same pattern and consistency for all of the instructions. If you are syncing with Google Synergy Sync, though, we do have some tips and tricks for that, which Karn is going to cover later. He also had a session yesterday, so please come to that if you're thinking about it. There are great 2 or 3 ways to get Google Synergy Sync right and about 150 ways for it to go wrong. So as long as you set it up right to begin with, it's like the best ever. If not, it's kind of a pain. So here's some examples of making sure you put, and before it didn't have formatting. I'm so happy it has formatting though, but maybe number your instructions, bold them, add links to instructions as opposed to within the assignment itself. So that way it keeps the assignment attachments easy for students to figure out what they have to complete. And the other thing I have seen a lot of different school districts do that have had Google Classroom a little bit longer is when students are used to that space and they're used to going to classroom.google.com and they have their classroom dashboard, consider making more classes. Now students know how to get in there. They understand how to get in with their code. And so now you can create possibly different, this is for mostly elementary, but create classrooms for different subjects. So I did that in the end, is I'd have a math class and a reading class, and then that way it kept their quote unquote grades pure, so they could really see where their reading grades were, and they can see where their math grades were. And then it was easier for me to organize topics of units or modules. You can create a Google Classroom just for homework. So you can see how they're doing homework when they're away from you, very independent work, versus what you're doing in the classroom, or having book clubs or literacy circles. I had a Google Classroom for early finishers, which students liked because they can pick any of those activities. And then once it was grayed out, they knew they completed that activity and they can do a different one. I have worked with some schools to create project-based learning classrooms just for their project-based activities. And so I'll show you one of those. It's structured a little bit differently with like just discussion questions and then just activities in a different section. And so all of that project-based stuff is in that particular classroom for those particular groups. You can create even a Google Classroom that's just a template for using Google Classroom. So here is a PBL classroom example that I had created and asked if I could make a copy with another group is, so what is project-based learning? It had all of the information about, we had a PBL water site. I explained, students have a reference to what are we doing here. And then I would do lessons that are discussion question lessons, but they were linked to the different activities. So here's water throughout history. And so students would see how water was used, and then students would, and this is, like I said, upper elementary, but you can obviously do it older. The water cycle, how the water cycle is used, and taking that knowledge and discussing it in their teams, they had to go in their group now and identify their problem. And then they had to work together on this collaborative Google Doc for what is the problem? How can we solve this water problem? What is your problem? What are you thinking? And then step 2 of their project is, who is your audience going to be? What are you going to do with this? And so the teams would just always meet, I think like 2 or 3 times a week. And this was in my class. We did a project-based learning water, and we ended up raising money for a different country and got them a well. But you have this idea of structuring this so that way groups or teams could go in here and work at it at their own pace. So one group might still be on lesson 1 and working on project step 1, where another group has gone through this and completed this. So it's kind of just a way to organize all of those things in a project-based learning classroom. Here's the example of that early finishers classroom. So I would organize it by topics. So if you were finished early in reading, you have these activities you can do. You can create this poster, a digital poster. You can read a picture book and then take a picture of it. You can work on this crossword. If you are finished early in math, you can play Prodigy, and there's a link to that. Well, there was. You can play math facts games. If you're finished early in writing, you can write postcards. So it was just, anytime I came up with a random idea for, if they're finished early, I'll have them do this, I would just throw it into this classroom, and then students can finish it whenever they were able to finish it. And then this was one of the ones for my homework. I didn't really do like hardcore homework. It was more so I really want you to read and love this. And so I would focus in on genre. So here's our traditional literature unit. So we're talking about our traditional literature. What is genre? So what's the name of your book? What type of traditional literature does it most represent? And so there were just really quick questions they can get in there and complete, but it was nice because they can respond back to each other. So if they're like, wow, my character has these 3 character traits, what 3 character traits did your character have? So that worked out pretty good. I really liked doing that. I had just started out doing it before I switched over to Edtech, but it seemed to work out great at the time. So here were just some examples of ways you could possibly take Google Classroom to the next level, or how you can organize it a little bit differently now that we're back in the classroom. Tips for middle school and high school, though. Make sure you're trying to use Google Calendar within Google Classroom. Please do not do emojis or a lot of formatting because the syncing with Synergy tends to have problems. And don't expect verbal directions to be enough, but I can't remember the number. Maybe Aaron knows off the top of his head. But there is a limit to how many characters you can have for it to sync with Synergy correctly. So I showed you a lot of stuff, but I'm just telling you a warning. I did come from the elementary space. If you do want to sync with Synergy, Car knows all of that. I just wanted to put a little caveat on there for you guys. Going along with Screencastify, if you've never got Screencastify. Oh, was there any questions about Google Classroom? Sorry, I just got excited.
Yeah, you can go ahead and unmute and ask if you'd like at this point. No questions in the chat.
We have a training on Screencastify. We support it like through the district. We're not going to pay for it. One of the reasons we like Screencastify is it has 5 minutes for the free version. I will be honest, I'm going to throw this out here. I bought my own version. I think our team, not knocking Aaron or anything, but would buy it for us. But I just loved it so much and I used it, and it's like $30 a year. I just told my husband not to buy Starbucks twice and I was good. So what it has is it's an extension where you can record your desktop, you can have the microphone, and you can embed the webcam. And now you're going to see the ridiculous amount of recordings I have. But the reason I enjoyed Screencastify was for this, is once you record a video, it's going to open up here and it's going to have it in all your recordings. It's also going to keep this in your drive. And so it works very well with Google. It's a Google extension. It functions with it. And what I enjoyed about this, and so I can send out quick little screen videos that I can show someone. So I actually created this for an email where someone was asking, how can I reuse a post, right? One of the things I like about this is I can go here to share once the video's here, and I can just publish it straight to YouTube. Every single APS teacher has a YouTube channel because YouTube and Google are together. So if you didn't know that, we have a YouTube/Screencastify training. And I usually keep them unlisted so you can't search them, but I can copy that link and it's as fast as that. I created the video here with the extension. I click on the extension off and I can record and talk at the same time. I can copy this link. And one of the things I started using it for, it was for the adult PD during the pandemic. But what teachers can use it for is within those Google tools, you can open up a comment or a comment within Google Classroom and just share that YouTube link back to the student. And you have a really quick screen capture of their work. So they turn in their work in Google Classroom and you're like, oh, you did this really great. You know, you had an intro right here. Your body's really good. But down here where you have the, you know, wrap up of your paper, we really need to look at that bottom paragraph. I think you need to change some language here. So check that out for me. And then you stop the recording. Once it's open, you just publish to YouTube really fast, grab that link, and you can send that back to the student and they can see exactly what you're talking about without having to do a whole bunch for a long time, and then they can refer back to it. You can also provide detailed notes for subs. You can create weekly vlogs as parent newsletters. You can create like a YouTube channel and have a little vlog for parents and explain what you're doing, and you can show your screen. There's just so many great ways to do this, as well as recording small instructional videos for small groups. So that's just some ideas. If you do want to look more at EdTech for Screencastify, these are tools I'm just touching on. I am including the instructional videos for them, as well as a quick how-to, or you can schedule a training with us and we will totally help you out. I don't want the video to play. I forgot to turn that off. Hold on. Doop. Okay. So here are some other screen recording tools, though, because I know I played favorites with Screencastify, but you can look into Loom or even QuickTime on your Mac if you have a Mac computer or an iPad. Edpuzzle is another one. We have a training for that. Apple Clips I mentioned previously, or iMovie if you are working with the younger kiddos. So those are available too. So now let's talk about Goguardian. I don't know if you want to put in the chat for me how many of you guys used Goguardian or were aware of Goguardian. Goguardian, every teacher does have, I'm correct in that, right, Erin? Every teacher has a Goguardian account? Yes. And if you try and get in Goguardian and it doesn't seem like your account's coming up, let us know and we'll make sure that we have that in our admin console here. But what Goguardian is if I go to teacher.goguardian.com, and I won't be able to show you a lot because I'm not running a session with other students, is you can monitor what students are doing on their Chromebooks. Now, this won't work with iPads, I'm sorry, but we do have a training on Apple Classroom, but most students had Chromebooks at this point, second up, so I was focusing on Goguardian, sorry. You can create classrooms within Goguardian, and then I'll just start a session. I might have one up. You can start a session and then you're going to, yes, I do. You can see the students who are logged into their Chromebooks here on the screen. Now, what's a little bit different about being in the classroom and you're like, well, I don't need to monitor what they're doing, is it's not just that. It really helps you to manage your students using the devices online. So one thing you can do, so here's Zoe, is I can click on the screen and I can see what she's doing. And what's nice is you can open this screen in a new tab. So I can go here to a new tab. She's getting on YouTube, poor thing. But I can go here to a new tab and I can show that to the whole rest of the class and they can see what they're doing. And I can go to ELS Student 3 and the principal and all that kind of stuff. The other thing is you can turn chat on. And I'm going to actually get out of here because I don't know what Zoe's doing. I can go here on Goguardian and you can, like I said, click on the student screen and then show this on the Promethean board and the student can explain what they did. So it's easy to kind of cast it up there. Some teachers were asking like, well, now that we have Chromebooks, how do I cast it or have a student come up? It's not perfect, but it is one way that you can click on it, open it in a new tab. And then once that tab's up on your screen, say, okay, come on up to the classroom, show what you're working on. What does yours look like? How did you do it? Kind of thing. Another way to use Goguardian is you turn on chat and you're able to click on the chat button and either chat to each student, or what's nice is you can create an announcement for the whole class. So maybe they're taking an assessment on Google Forms or they're doing something and you can just be like, hey guys, you have 5 minutes left, or don't forget you have to do this, or don't forget to include this, I forgot to mention it. And you can just send an announcement to the whole class and push it out to their computers. Now, going along with that, there are something in Goguardian called scenes. So I have been asked multiple times by teachers, well, now that we don't have Google Meet, how can I share a link to students just really super fast out to all of their computers because we're not going to be on a Meet in the classroom? Do I have to be on Google Meet? How do I do this? How do I manage the space? One way to do that is to go to Goguardian and create a scene. And then you're going to go to allowed website lists. And what you do is you're going to search for whatever link you want them to go to. So maybe a link to a specific Google form or a link to a specific site, or you can get the link from any Google activity, any other like quizzes activity, anything like that. Add it to, you're going to click on it and then have it auto open and then add it to the scene. And once students are working, you can go, okay, guys, we're going to go head over to our Google Classroom. I'm going to send you that link. And you click here to the scene, click it, and it'll push out to all of the Chromebooks and put them onto that web page right there on their Chromebooks. Whoops. Somehow I freaked it out. Sorry. Oh, of course, it goes back to the YouTube video. Don't you? Okay. Are there any questions about Goguardian? Guess what? We also have Goguardian training. But it's definitely a different managed space than when you're in the classroom. So and Erin put the link to request Goguardian in there. So that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, that document that I shared actually has links to everything that we support. So it has our website, the other coursework and request forms. It has everything. So it's a really good resource to share.
Nice.
And use.
So going along with Linda, because she's awesome with me, is the rest of you guys are awesome too. I just don't know you. Okay. Is using Google Forms within the classroom. So you can create really quick in-class exit tickets. Like Linda said, you can use them as peer feedback and review. You can use them as assessments with built-in interventions within the assessments. You can have classroom procedures with automation. So you can, I'll show you what that means. Like you can have behavior slips or bathroom passes. So we do have a Google Forms Plus. We have a lot of our tools like Plus, how you can use them even higher level. And we go over how to do all of the specifics for that. But here are a couple examples. Here's like a place value exit ticket, and you can just change them really quick. They don't take very long to make. But when a student comes in and they put in their name, and then they have to put in their answer, just one quick answer. So if I want to round this to the nearest 100 and I say 5,680 and I go to the next screen, if I get it incorrect, I'm hoping it doesn't freeze up on me. It'll say, nope, you have to review this. And so then it just stuck in a quick YouTube video. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, I did that wrong. I see what I did. I'm going to go back to retake my exit ticket. Let me try that again, rounding to the nearest 100. Let's see. So I'm going to go here to 5,700 and go next. Boom, I did a great job. And so it's built right there within the Google form. So quick way on how you do this, but like I said, we have a training on how to do it, is within Google Forms, there are sections. Possibly, if it ever comes up. Come on, monkey. There it goes. There are sections. So first you're going to want to create a section for each path you want to take. So in this case, there's a path for incorrect answers. So that's section 2. And then section 3 is going to be the path for, woohoo, you did it right. And on Google Forms, on the bottom of each section here, as long as it is a multiple choice question, if you go down to these 3 dots, you can go to a section based on an answer. So I'm going to click that. And then here, if I get this answer, which is incorrect, I go to section 2, section 2, section 2. And if I get the answer correct, I go to section 3. And then on section 2, I just built a really quick insert a YouTube video right here. That's using this, adding a video. And then, yes, I did the same thing. Whoops. Oop, come on. Yes, I go back to section 2 or section 1. If I say no, then I stay here. And if I go back to section 1, I can take it again. And if I get the correct answer, it says good job. So it's kind of just built in sort of like mini interventions. So that's just another way you can use Google Forms. Another way you can use Google Forms is you can set them up as quizzes. It's very similar to the same way, where if a student gets a quiz answer wrong, it will give them feedback of either a video or information, so you can set it up that way. Another way I had used Google Forms is have it as a classroom behavior form. So on my form, whoops, and I can't scroll down on it. Killing me. On my form, it said, like, what was your behavior? What were you trying to achieve out of this behavior? If you could have done something differently, what would it have been? And then at the end, I would always have them, fill out this refocus form, come back to the group, tell me what you're thinking about, and then I can refer back to it later. And what's nice is in a Google form, it'll create it as a sheet, and I can go through and filter out certain students. And then I can go over those behavior responses at parent-teacher conferences. And then I would also make a copy of that and print it out and have it for SAT packets. So that was another way that I really like to use Google Form for managing my space. There are just so many ways, though. I just put in a few, or else we were going to be here forever. Another thing is I would create them for just like checking out books in my classroom or going to the bathroom. You don't have to do this. It's just, I know at our school, and I don't know if it's at other schools, they had issues, vandalizing the bathroom. And then they'd say, look at your sign-in sheet and figure out exactly what time. And you're going through all these papers. And it was just ridiculous. And I said, you know what? I'm automating this. And so here was my bathroom pass where students would just choose their name and then they would choose, do you want to go to the bathroom, get a drink? You know, are you going, we had 2 different bathrooms in the portable or the building. But what I like about Google Forms and what some people don't know is that if you have it create a spreadsheet, you can use Google Sheets formulas and ways to format all of that response data in a whole bunch of different ways. So we do have a Google Sheets training as well. But here's all the kids going to the bathroom. And I said, man, some of these kids seem to be going at the same time, or they seem to be going a lot. So I created this formula for the first form. If a student's name came up, it would count it. And then we took how many times. This time was counted by 5 minutes. So we timed how long it took to walk to the building and back to go to the restroom if you're, you know, not there for 45 minutes. And then that's how much instructional time was missed for the month. And so if a student was at like 3 hours and 15 minutes, or a student, and thank goodness I only put their first names, but if it was at like 3 hours and 40 minutes because they gone 44 times, then I can filter and go back to that student and be like, man, you always miss math instruction. Do you really need to go to the bathroom, or you miss math instruction? Maybe a better time to do that would be this time. And I never tell students they can't go. It was just more so I think you need to be aware of this, and data, you know, just like adults, makes them very aware of what they need to do. Same thing for checking out books. Hey man, you've been reading 17 books in our class. Are you finished with any of them? Where did you put those? You know, so just managing those different things within your classroom, Google Forms are great. Like I said, I have so many ideas for Google Forms, classroom rubrics for students creating them, parent reference forms, branching activities. So if you want to do a Google Forms Plus training, let us know because we got a lot for that. So next section is talking about student engagement. But before I leave, were there any questions, sorry, about the previous section?
Nothing in chat, but if you guys want to unmute, you can ask again.
Or like Linda, she shared a great way to use Google Forms. If you have any other ways to use Google Forms, or if you're like, wow, I had a great idea for how to manage my Google Classroom or anything like that, like I'm game. This is how we learn stuff. I don't know more than you. I'm not even like crazy tech expert or something. I just go meet a lot more people and come up with ideas and say, hey, can I share that? Can I mention that? Can I, that? It's just, I'm basically a tech hoarder, I guess, where I'm at. Okay. I have a very touchy pad here. Let's start talking about EdTech and using student engagement to keep students engaged now within class. So some of the things we're going to talk about are Pear Deck. Going along with Pear Deck is Flashcard Factory, but some people don't know that that's embedded in it. And looking at possibly gamifying your instruction. And all of these are, Pear Deck and Flashcard Factory are supported by APS. The other things are just things that typically work with Google, but they are sort of on your own that you can check out, but just know they exist. So one of the things we have now for APS, and if you haven't checked it out, is Pear Deck. And it's an add-on for Google Slides, and you can add in interactive questions, and you can have students have drawing tools, and they have a bunch of different question styles, and you can turn any lesson into a formative assessment. So what I mean by that is within a Google slide itself, I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to show you guys this one later, is you go here to Pear Deck for add-ons. And it's going to open up within Google Slides a menu here on the right. Sorry, it just might be really slow. I'm hoping it opens. I'll try it again, but I don't want to freeze it. Come on. Okay. I'm going to go this route. Maybe. All right. I'm going to pretend like I know it, that it's up here. We'll envision. It's going to open up a menu here on the right, and then it's going to allow you to either add in template slides or to add in different types of question styles within the slides. And actually, there it goes. Come on. I don't want to help. I want you to open. You're killing me, Smalls. Okay, we'll take my word for it. Everybody should have either going through add-ons Pear Deck, or you can click on Pear Deck here. And what happens is from within that menu, you can start the lesson. And I think what I did, because I know things like this happen, is I put screenshots in here. And this actually has audio on the slide, but students can draw on the slide. They can pick multiple choice. They can type in text. They can drag text, and it doesn't have to be like these cute little images. So it does work for middle school and high school. You structure it and set it up how you want. I know it looks a little bit weird. You can also structure Pear Deck in 2 different ways, either teacher-paced mode. And what's nice about that is you put it up on the Promethean board, and then every student has it on their screens, but it forces their screens to go along with whatever you're doing up on the board. And so students can answer the questions, and then you can show their responses up on the board, and they can be anonymous, but they will be saved for you exactly how the students had signed in, and then you can go back and refer to it later. What's good about Pear Deck is it was very much created and designed to be in the classroom, where the teacher can look at the teacher dashboard and see what teachers are doing, shown up on a projector and with one-to-one devices. One of the other things that's great about Pear Deck is you can have student-paced mode where they can work through lessons independently. The teacher can still get feedback and look at it afterwards, but it is student-paced mode. So here are a couple ways to use Pear Deck, and I really wish that had worked. I wonder if it'll go back and do it. Come on, you. I'm going to leave that there and see if it goes. If not, I'll do this one. It might be because I'm not the owner. Ooh, this one might work. All right. So you can go here and get a whole bunch of different templates for like the beginning of the lesson. And you just click on this and stick it in there. So students can type it out. They can work on things. So some of the things for using Pear Deck in class is this. Have students pair up and sit next to each other and talk about it, and then maybe discuss things before they put in their responses. Another way to use Pear Deck is to have students sit in a group, and then you all answer it, and then you can look at each other's screens. Or when you put the screen up on the board, you can have a discussion about how that's going. Really look at that drawing feature. There's so many different ways you can conceptual ideas and everything. Within Pear Deck, you can also lock the screen before sharing out results. So you're saying, okay, you have 30 seconds to finish that up. Let's lock the screen. And then students can't change their answer as they're seeing what everybody else does. Utilize the built-in timers in your classroom or within it to maintain the flow. Another thing is, and I was going to have you guys do this math problem, but I need a better picture because apparently this picture is not that great. But pair slides that have like simple one-way answers, because this is a number answer, right? Students just answer it and that's it, with more deeper questions paired up right next to it. So what is the answer to this math problem? I don't know if anyone wants to give it a shot. It is a little bit hard to see. I'll wait a second in case you want to try and do that in your head. Okay, so the answer is 14. So in my class, I would do this and say, okay, what was the answer? And then on the next slide, I would say, hey, the answer is 14. And if they're like, wait, I didn't get 14. So here's my question is, how did you decide on your number? If you got it correct, how did you solve it? If you didn't, what did you do? And then students type in their responses on this slide. But on the class, you can say, okay, everyone's typed in their response. Does anyone want to share what they typed or how they did it? Or how did you figure out this math problem? And some students will realize that they took off one banana and one coconut and they didn't come in groups as how much it is. It's each individual thing is worth something. So it's just having those discussions. I used to do really fun math problems like that where students had to kind of figure that out. Look at Pear Deck and look into student-paced mode where you're in small groups and teachers can see where students are on the teacher dashboard. They can send immediate feedback to manage students. So if I was using Pear Deck, I can set up a group activity, send it out as student-paced mode. Students can click on that link either through Goguardian or Google Classroom. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Through Goguardian or Google Classroom. And then they can work through that student-paced mode activity in class. And I can monitor it from my end in between switching groups. So I'll be like, oh, this student's on this slide. Oh, this student's completed this. And you can really monitor it and then pull up your next group. So in here are some different templates and things that they have at Pear Deck. And going along with Pear Deck is something called Flashcard Factory. So Flashcard Factory is a game within Pear Deck itself where students create their own flashcards. And I will be honest, I had Flashcard Friday, which is kind of crazy, every other week when we would be switching around vocabulary words for our lessons, like our reading lessons, we would switch every couple of weeks. And so I would build in this Pear Deck activity for going over vocabulary. So I gave you directions on how you set up Flashcard Factory. It's not super hard. What you do, and some teachers may not even be aware, but there's Pear Deck, which is built in as the add-on for Google Slides. But if you go to peardeck.com, this is where you are going to manage your teacher account. And from within peardeck.com, you're going to want to sign in with your Google account, and everybody has a Pear Deck account, and it's a premium account. So you are going to have that for the next year. And I'm going to log in with Google. And it's a little bit obscure, and you're kind of like, okay, vocabulary, like, I don't even know. But it's over here to create a vocabulary list. So at the beginning of the year, I created a vocabulary list, and I put the word and the definition. Towards the end of the year, I had students, instead of writing an example sentence, I actually had them either remember the definition or figure out how to look up the definition or figure out based on context what the definition would be. But let's say I had, okay, I got this book. I'll share it in the slide deck. I'll make sure and put it. It was like 1 word vocabulary writing responses per day. It's amazing. It's probably like $7, but they have really high level words with examples, and that we would go through a word a day, and I'd have students keep them on these 3x5 cards, and they would flip them and they'd hang them next to their desk, and they had words like legerdemain, simian. And so if students could flip through and they could add a word in context to our conversations or things we were doing throughout the year, I would give their teams a point, because I used to have like team points where we can earn Friday fun and do stuff. But they learned so much vocabulary that way. It was crazy. But one of the words was legerdemain, which is a fancy word for a magician. Okay. I wonder if it'll pull up in here. It can pull up a definition, but that's kind of, and I'm not entirely sure I'm even spelling it correctly. But if I go here, I've got my words and definitions. It's so fast to pull your vocabulary words and definitions. Once you have that, you play Flashcard Factory, and that's pretty much it for setting it up from the teacher's end. And this is why I love to play Flashcard Factory every Friday, because it was a super easy win for me, especially on a Friday. And then hence I said we'd earn points for Friday fun, and some of them just wanted to keep playing Flashcard Factory. But the way that Flashcard Factory works is very similar to Pear Deck, where you go to joinpd.com and they put in a code. Now, I'm going to get out of that because it's going to kill my machine if I do it. But what it does is it creates 2 different groups, a day shift and a night shift. So they're kind of competing against each other. And then you click on Let's Play. And what it does on the student view is the students are going to have a screen where they partner up. So this is why it's so great in class, is you'll say, okay, find the members of your group. Student 2 and 3 go together. And in this case, it would be their names because it's pulling from their Gmail account. But for me, it was just our fake students. And student 1 has to write a sentence or a definition while student 2 is drawing a picture going along with student 1. So they have to kind of match it up. And when they're happy with it, they can click this thing that says, looks good, let's ship it. And then on the screen on the teacher's end, all of these little flashcards are falling down. So here's my example is I put educational technology in a sentence, and we drew a little picture of a kid on a computer. And I'm going to send it over here to quality control. And then what happens is I bring my students back together, and this is how much we used it, is I created little green check cards and little red X cards. And we would go through and look at all of the little flashcards that were created by students. So you can see other students' work and you can say, wow, that's a good one. I'm going to go ahead and click, the check mark. And I'd say, what about this next one? Oh, the picture doesn't really match the definition, or that definition wasn't really that great. What do you guys think? And we'd all vote with a red card and be like, sorry. And so we did it enough that like no one's feelings got super hurt, or they can see what they had to fix. And then you send it off to shipping. And what that does is it exports all of the student flashcards to Gimkit. And then students can get into Gimkit. It's usually paid, but with Pear Deck, it actually allows you to play specific games with the Pear Deck decks. And then students can use their own flashcards with their own definitions and pictures from the class to practice using those vocabulary words. So great interactive way to use Pear Deck with students. It's really great. I love it. It's okay. We're good. I'll keep recording. So if you're new to Pear Deck, let us know. We have great Pear Deck level 1 training, Pear Deck level 2 using videos, really going in depth in things, as well as using Flashcard Factory at that second level. Another thing you can do is Gamify Instruction. Now, there's a little bit of a difference between game-based learning and gamifying the classroom. So just a little bit of a difference. I'm actually saying it wrong, but that's fine. Is game-based learning is adding in game elements, adding one game to a lesson, usually uses gaming tools for things, helping with engagement. Actually, what I was talking about with Flashcard Factory is game-based learning. If you are doing gamification, that applies to game mechanics throughout the whole year. So you can incorporate it over time. So what I'm meaning by that is you can create like leaderboards, or you can have digital badges where students can earn things in class if they complete stuff. So using digital tools for gamifying instruction. And there is a link to a whole other slide deck of something I did for gamifying instruction. But you can sprinkle gaming or game-based learning on things you already have. So create really quick games with slides, add in Flipgrid. Like I said, you can add in Flashcard Factory. It's not a full-on game, but it makes it more engaging and fun. You can go traditional and add in like Scrabble or Categories or Monopoly or something to games. Utilize online platforms. There are a ton of them. Or look at things. These are not supported by the district. I was just mentioning them because my students love Prodigy so much. We're not paying for it, but it is free, and it does work with their Google account. But I'm just saying, like, we need to make sure that they are appropriated, and I try to pick any of them that we've already looked at or people have asked about. The ones that are supported by APS are Pear Deck, so definitely check that one out first, or Flipgrid. Gimkit is tied into Pear Deck, but there are some fun ones like Quizlet or Poll Everywhere. I used to use Quizzes a lot. It's free, but you have to kind of keep recreating things. A couple of teachers have asked for Padlet. You can use Padlet. You just have to recreate it, or Nearpod. I wanted to mention these because I know they're very popular. They're not supported or paid by the district, but if you want to check them out, they are available. So one of the things was like quizzes, and I think it knocked me out. I had it open. You can create quizzes with students. And you put your content in, and then you put specific answers, and then students can play all against each other in class, and they're trying to compete against each other to answer all the questions correctly. And they get like power-ups and they get fun things. So it's like taking that idea of a quiz and taking it to the next level, and then you can save it. Now, like I said, these have the only ones I mentioned have really great free offerings. I'm never going to push to have you buy anything. Please don't ask me to have money to buy it, because the answer is no. So you can use the free version. I've never bought it. I've always had the free version. So I have like a library of different quizzes, and I have the students take it, and we just kind of compete. But there's just fun interactive tools out there for you guys to check out, is all I'm trying to say. Content differentiation. I don't know what blurb to put here, so I just left it blank. But here are some ways that we can differentiate content. But before I do that, any questions about what we've covered so far? Cool. These ones aren't going to be as long because basically, like I said, I kind of mentioned before, things already, like the project-based learning Google Classroom or creating student menus, having Hyperdocs or student choice boards, and I'm going to cover those in a minute. Yes, I think that was the one I forgot, so I'm going to throw that in there. Using templates for things, but you can also create this to have student voice and choice using what we talked about before and tweaking it in a different way. So I'm going to show you some examples on that. There's student-created rubrics. You can have branching for different lessons within Google Forms. So we kind of talked about that a little bit. One of the other things is to check out Kagan. Certain schools have Kagan, other schools don't. Kagan is interactive conversation activities and things that you can do. But what I want to mention with Kagan is they don't just have like very quick, how do I put it? Quick group activities. They also have a lot of differentiated things to do. So one of those things is like quiz trade, where you have questions that students hold and they walk around the room and they quiz each other and then they high five and then they trade questions and they go on to the next student. But they do have, oh, and I think it closed. I'm sad. Yeah, it did. I think when it overwhelmed, it did. If you want to check out Kagan, oh, what are they called? I bought them in regular form and digital form. And you can check out if your school would be interested in doing that, because they do have a lot of Kagan resources. They are fairly expensive. That's what I hated about Kagan. But they also have these ideas for like classroom management, or they have books that explain how to do stuff. One of the things was student jobs, and this like totally changed my life. I absolutely loved it. One of the other teachers had it and gave it to me. So I linked to this one, but there's a whole bunch of different publishing things that they have, is having classroom committees. This I think will work better in elementary a little bit, but you can totally do like classroom government in middle school, high school, or have less committees than this. But I had a party planning committee. I had a decorating committee. I ended up having a judicial committee about student behaviors. I had a budget committee for how, if parents wanted to give us money, they would decide what we would spend it on. I'm talking about 4th and 5th graders, and they took the responsibilities very heavily, and they had to apply for them, and we had to vote for them, and we picked them. But once I had a party planning committee in my class, the students, if the students had a birthday, it was up to the party planning committee. It was not me. And so I would, say, okay, let's figure out this and that. You tell me what to buy and how to do it. And so they're like, we want pencils. And one class came up with like a cup of treats, and then they would decorate the student's desk, and they would say, can we come in early on their birthdays? And I'm like, yeah, you got to know when the birthdays are. And they set up Google Calendar, and the calendar would tell them what day students' parties were on, and they would come in and they would put together the cup, and they would make signs for the student, and they would decorate the desk. And so that time where I would have done that as a teacher, they were totally doing it. So having those committees for students to do it with student voice and choice. But what I'm saying is I would incorporate digital tools with that. A judicial committee, I use Class Dojo for Team Points, but you can use other tools and stuff where students would be getting points, and then at the end of the day, they can take Class Dojo and they can write letters. They can figure out if a student did well or not. Then we could like move things on the board, and they would write things out. The things that I used to do before the class was now doing. So they were also in charge of giving team points, and they had an iPad on their desk, and they would be the committee doing it. And so incorporating digital tools with things like that, great. It worked out so well. Best decision I ever made. It saved so much time. It took a while to get them used to doing it, but man, it was just amazing. Using Google, we're going to go back to those same tools because I didn't want to throw a lot at you, but using them in a different way. Google Slides now for differentiating content is you can create agendas or templates for students to have their own notebooks or having their own choice boards on things. So I just gave you a freebie here because I finally found my Google Slide template of all of my graphic organizers, which I've been talking about for like 2 trainings now. So I'm just throwing that in there. Slides Mania, once again, has all of these made, which is so great. Digital choice boards. So I'm going to take this out because I just threw that Pear Deck one in there. You can use this template if you're into Bitmojis. We also have a Bitmoji training. I feel like I'm doing this as I'm not meaning to. That wasn't my intention as like a giant like PSA for a department, like come to me and learn everything. But that's basically what we want anyway. So you can go in here and throw in a Bitmoji, your own Bitmoji here. And on this template that was created from Slidesmania, you can change the text that says the activity and then change the little icon here. And then once students are in the slide deck, it will link them to all of these different activities. So if you are creating a choice board or you're creating something like this, you don't want to share this version with students. It's mostly for content. It's mostly for links. What you're going to want to share is the published version. So if you don't know how to get a published version of a Google slide deck, go to File, and then we're going to publish to the web. This doesn't necessarily mean like everyone on the web can see it. It's just getting a link that is interactive. So I'm going to go here and change this a little bit higher because we don't really want it to be the thing that switches, or I might even put it like as a minute. It's going to be the links are on it for students to have anyway. So I'm going to publish this. I'm going to hit OK. And what's nice now, there it goes, is I can go to publish content settings. And for some reason, I can't get down there, where I can restrict access to only people in APS. So I'm going to click that where it's going to be restricted. I'm sorry, you can't see that. I can't move my screen to make it better. But I'm going to use this link to give to students. And the reason I'm saying that, and that's the one I'm presenting off of right now, is if you put that link in the URL or you hand it off during Google Classroom or something like that, when students, you know, you can put your image here and be like, okay, welcome. When I click on it, now when the student goes to a specific activity, whoops, I clicked on it too fast. It's going to go to that activity, and then I'm going to click this and go back to the front. And then I can click here if I want to go to activity 1. And so it gives them that branching to get to that particular activity. And what's awesome is in all of these Slidesmania templates right here, that's already built in. She's also created some great journals. I think one of my favorite one is the Hyperdoc Journal. And they call it the Hyperdoc Handbook Journal, but you can change it to be whatever you want. Students will get this. Each individual student will get their own copy of this sort of handbook, right? And you can change it to, instead of saying engage, explore, explain, I would have created one for science that was like, you know, vocabulary, you know, content, like what are your observations? And then you can insert, or students can insert a video of what they found. They can write out what they are finding. And then the next day they can get on here and add it on the next page. And then the next day. And then when they're completely finished with their book and all of the different sections, and it's getting them to learn how to use it. But what's nice is you keep it for the whole year, or you keep it for a longer period of time. When they have the project finished and they publish it to the web and they're done, they can share it with parents. They can have it as an interactive binder or piece of work that they have either in a student portfolio or something that they're going to want to keep, because it houses all of their work, similar to how, you know, you'd have a regular spiral notebook. But now when they click on the engage page, it's going to take them to that engagement section. And I think I just might have picked one that's a little bit too big. See, and they can go here and then move on to the next page, or they can go over here to how they applied their learning and they can look at that section. And so I really liked using these. My 4th graders got the hang of it. It did take me a little while, but man, they got the hang of it and they liked it. Another way that you can incorporate that branching is where students pick those activities. Here is another example of having a menu where students have to finish like 3 out of the 5 activities. Like you have to pick one of an entree, an appetizer, and a beverage, but they get to pick whichever one they want, and it links over to those specific tools. So my machine's working so much faster now that I don't have 50 tabs open. But there's some examples. They will all, if you click on it, you will be able to make your own copy in your drive, and you will have copies for yourself. Going along with this, though, is the idea of Google Docs. If you're not a fan of Google Slides, You can create hyperdocs the same way as we talked about before, but you can also set them up as student choice boards. So instead of having Google Docs for Monday you do this, Tuesday you do this, we just configure them a little bit differently and say, choose something from the top row and the right row. Choose something from the middle and the left and the right. When you are using this, make sure you complete 3 out of the 6 activities. And so you can create using those same tools in a different way. So I have talked for a ridiculous amount of time. I hope we gave you some ideas. I'm totally going to give you the published version of this slide deck. I will be giving you the video afterwards for this. I am going to share with you our feedback form, if you wouldn't mind, and the feedback form's already filled out as well. Because like I said, normally we'll say, what tool are you looking at? And we went over like 5 sections from our sign-in thing today. So I'll give you that. It's going to be a ridiculous link. We greatly appreciate feedback. I know for sure. I'm not the only one in our team who will look at that. It doesn't hurt our feelings. But if you're like, man, I wish it was this. Man, I wish we did that. So right now I'm sharing the feedback form. If you wouldn't mind, you don't have to fill it out right now. You can fill it out later. I will be sending a follow-up email with everything. I do have at the back of this our Edtech resources for you guys to have if you want to have this slide deck. If you're like, oh, they talked about having a request for training, I don't know where to find that. There's a link for that in the slide deck. If you have questions about stuff and you're like, I really want to use Flashcard Factory, but it's not working, or I can't see if I have the premium account, we have a question form. If you want to check out all of our videos from our tech camp training, from any training, from specific tool training, we do have a YouTube channel. We're going to amp that up this year. I'm hoping with some quick, fast tips and tricks. So consider subscribing. I never thought in my years of being a 40-year-old woman, which I'm going to edit that out, by the way, that I'm this old that I would say subscribe to my YouTube channel, but that's where we're at. Edtech technology website, which has so many updates. It has all of our tools, and it has how you can do our self-paced courses to get some digital badging. I would consider doing that this year because we are also going to be amping that up and hopefully having a lot of incentives for teachers. So I'm going to give you the published version of this site. Thank you for hanging out with me. We do have until 11:30, so I'm going to have this time for questions, or if you want to say, hey, can you show me something more in depth, I will totally be here. But thanks for hanging with us for this long period of time today, and I'm going to stop, though, our live stream and our recording.